Week 10 injury news and updates and player prop targets edition of the Propcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Sign up with promo code MACHINE to get a 50% deposit bonus of up to $1,000. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Start crushing college football and the NFL with Rhythm. Get your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM.
And taking a shot to ground downfield. He makes the catch, and he gets in for the touchdown. The catch is made by Calvin Ridley. Wilson, good as he throws deep downfield. It's going to be caught by Metcalf.
Welcome, everyone, to the Propcast, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. NFL Week 10 upon us, entering now the double-digit weeks for the NFL season. I can't believe I am saying that. I'm sure every other NFL prop or podcast is saying that as well. But of course, you guys know how we do it here on this edition of the Propcast. We'll go through all the injury news and notes. Guys that are out, guys that are coming back. Of course, we'll discuss our player prop targets for NFL Week 10. But it's not about me on this episode of the Propcast, I should say. It's about my co-host, and he is Sebastian Fearon, the D-Gen Doc. Sebastian, what is going on, my friend?
How we doing, man? How we doing? Yeah, like you said, week 10. On one hand, it feels like where's the season gone? On the other hand, I feel like we've been in the grind, and sometimes it's like, how is it only week 10? So definitely nice to hit those double digits, and excited as the NFL is starting to shape its way out, and so is this prop market.
Yeah, I was starting to see the pretenders separating themselves from the contenders here as we get into the latter part of the season here. But again, a lot to get to as far as the injury front does go here for the NFL Week 10 show, like we talked about. Guys that we've talked about earlier when we started doing this specific episode for the Propcast about guys that would be coming back, and we'll get to those games, of course, in particular with my team, because we need all the help that we can get right now, because they decided to sit on their hands and not make any trades to acquire pieces, I should say, here for my Houston Texans. But Sebastian, let's get into it here, man. You want to I know we usually do kind of a recap of how we did last week on the guys that we did talk about there, but anything from last week that stood out as far as the guys that we did cover for the player prop market?
Yeah, a guy that we talked about and that we'll probably be talking about again tonight. Mike Gesicki, tight end for the Cincinnati Bengals, really reaping the benefits of no T. Higgins, 2 touchdowns, 100 yards, leading wide receiver. And then Taysom Hill did find the end zone for us last week. He's potentially got another nice lineup there. Chris Olave likely going to be out. So some things where they'll be missing some pieces. And last time he played Atlanta, he did pretty well. So we'll see there. So those are two big guys that jump out at me off the top of my head of who we were talking about and who really came home for us last week.
Yeah, I think we talked extensively about Mike Gesicki. We'll see what the status of T. Higgins is for this Thursday night football game here. And we'll start there. Got a good one after the last couple of weeks. Been a little bit of a clunker, so we were used to at the beginning of the season here. But Week 10 kicks off Thursday night football AFC North matchup. The Cincinnati Bengals, they are in Baltimore to take on the Ravens. Ravens currently laying 6 points here at home with them. Probably the biggest total of the season thus far. 53 is a number right now between the Bengals and the Ravens. We just talked about Mike Gesicki showing out in the absence of T. Higgins. Sebastian will let us know if he will be back this week on a short week or not. But Sebastian, what are we looking at for Bengals and Ravens?
Yeah, no, definitely a division rivalry game that on paper looks good. Although I do like Baltimore to roll a little bit here. But we've got on the Baltimore side first, quarterback Lamar Jackson did not practice today. I said this last week, I'm not concerned. Neither is Jim Harbaugh, who, he said he's already going to play. So we don't have to worry about, hey, it's just, kind of a rest situation. He did it last week and he came out and he balled out. So no concerns there. Now, there are concerns for tight end Isaiah Likely, dealing with the hamstring injury, 2 no practices in a row. So I would not expect him to be out there. Not only miss this week, potentially the week after. Obviously, Mark Andrews opens things up. Charlie Kohler, another guy, no matter who it is, they like to use the tight ends. there. So, if you're looking for a dart throw as far as in the prop market, something anytime touchdown, Kohler might be a name. But obviously, Mark Andrews gets a bump there. And then Keaton Mitchell, running back, full practice. He's expected to be activated and play this week. Now, he's coming off an ACL plus, I think he had ACL, PCL, he had multiple ligaments there. Not really anybody coming off that. I'm looking to, I'll go ahead and back them right away. I think this actually, if anything, lowers the numbers on Derrick Henry and Justice Hill, gives you an opportunity to get in on those guys, because I'm not expecting a whole lot from Keaton Mitchell really for the next couple weeks. Similar to Nick Chubb and all those guys coming back from big injuries there. In the trade market, they did trade for cornerback Tre'Davious White. In the past, asked me 3 years ago, I think this would be a splash trade. He's a guy who hasn't even starting for the Los Angeles Rams and really got passed up the depth chart, coming off an Achilles and an ACL tear in back-to-back years. So we'll see if a little bit of a new environment can get a breath of fresh air for a past defense that's not been very good. On the Bengals side, we've got the guys who are definitely out. Eric All, ACL, out for the season. Their backup tight end there. Zach Moss, running back. He's dealing with a neck injury, and I think I've talked about this. I know I've talked about it on my show and talked about it in the past, but these neck injuries, they're very, they can be very touch and go, especially when we start talking about structural issues. He's already likely out for the season. This is something I talked about not only his season, but his career. Chris Carson is a guy who comes to mind who recently had to medically retire due to a structural injury. Anytime there's kind of nerve damage to the neck, he had required a fusion. His mobility just wasn't going to be there. It's hard to then go ram your neck into 300-pound men. So concerns there for Zach Moss, obviously this season, but really career long there. Getting to guys who are likely going to play. Chase Brown looks like he was a full practice. He should be good to go. Picked up a bit of a rib injury. But T. Higgins, no practice again. 2 straight non-practices in a row. I talked about this last week, but he injured himself late 2 weeks ago, Friday. So he's really only on like 2 weeks of recovery here. So I'm not really too shocked. BJ Hill, their defensive tackle, who's actually stepped up well for them, especially in the run game. He's not practiced 2 days in a row with a rib injury. But Orlando Brown, offensive tackle, did get upgraded to a limited practice today. So there's some optimism there for Brown and obviously Chase Brown. So both Orlando and Chase Brown may be able to give it a go. Definitely Chase Brown. And then you get Khalil Herbert, who Zach Taylor said he might be able to play. He was collecting dust in Chicago. But, it looks like they may give him a chance. So it might not be totally the Chase Brown show.
Yeah, I mean, a lot to get to here. Obviously, in this game to kick it off here on Thursday Night Football. And you mentioned, especially on the Cincinnati Bengals side, I think we talked about Mike Gesicki last week. Looks like it might be a big week for him as well. Again, the Baltimore Ravens have been one of the teams that have been giving it up to the tight end position. Them and the Chiefs are the two teams that really stick out as far as giving up yardage to the tight end position. So this might be another Mike Gesicki week here for the Cincinnati Bengals here. You mentioned, I chuckled when you mentioned Keaton Mitchell and if Derrick Henry's possibly gonna have to take maybe slightly a decrease in workload over the next couple of weeks here with him being back. It was just funny because he already went over his touchdown projection season long at 10.5. He's already at 11 in 9 games. Already has 1,000 rushing yards there for the Baltimore Ravens there. But yeah, some big injury implications here. Again, some of the props are starting to drop here. Actually, they have been dropping here for this Bengals and the Ravens game here. So maybe some of those other depth pieces that will get closer to game time here. But yeah, I'm definitely going to be on Mike Gesicki again here for this week for the Cincinnati Bengals. That is for sure. All right, before we continue the conversation here for NFL Week 10, let me remind everybody college basketball is officially back. If you aren't already subscribed to the College Basketball Experience for their daily picks podcast, breaking it all down every single day. And thanks again for all of our loyal listeners here and fans of the Propcast. If you can, head over to Spotify and give us a 5-star rating. Only you can prevent corporate gambling from taking over. All right, Sebastian, let's keep it rolling here, my man. Not much happening in the Germany game. That is going to be happening on Sunday morning there between the Giants and the Panthers. We'll move past that. Same thing for the Bills and the Colts there as well. So we'll move it along to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They are taking on the Commanders this week. Commanders laying 2.5 points in this game at home with a total of 45.5 here, Sebastian. What are we looking at for Steelers and Commanders?
Yeah, a couple things real quick. Going back to that first game, Chase Brown, I would say look at his under receive or rushing yards, excuse me. Ravens obviously one of the better rush defenses. His
Good
number was
point.
getting pretty high. It was around 60. I've already taken an all under there. And, not only the addition of Khalil Herbert, but really game script wise, I think if anything, you play him in the receiving route if you do like Chase Brown. And then, yeah, save your sleep on the Germany game. You don't want to watch Giants versus Carolina.
I don't think we
But
purposely skipped that game, but we'll just leave it at that.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, getting over to the Pittsburgh versus Washington, which really should be a solid matchup. I think
100%.
two teams squarely in playoff contention. Mike Tomlin off a bye going out against Jaden Daniels, who's looked like clearly the offensive rookie of the year. So for the Washington side, not a ton. Waiting for their report to drop a little bit, but their left tackle situation has been a bit up in the air with Cornelius Lucas going down. So let's see. They were having to play their left tackle number 3 last week. So we'll see if they get that position shored up when you got TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith coming to town. And then Brian Robinson wasn't able to play last week. We'll see if he's able to come back from that hamstring injury, I believe is what he's dealing with. Now on the Pittsburgh side, we get a little bit more clarity. Really, they're coming off a bye and they're getting healthier. Center Zach Frazier, rookie from West Virginia, with his ankle injury, he was back at practice, has a chance to return. Also, outside linebacker, edge rusher Nick Herbig from that hamstring injury, he's got a shot. And Cordell Patterson coming off that high ankle sprain suffered in week 4. All 3 of those guys, a little bit more depth pieces. Frazier definitely the starter there at center, but some guys that can add some juice to this lineup potentially going to be back. And really in the trade market, picking up wide receiver Mike Williams and defensive end Preston Smith. I think both quality guys that can see plenty of playing time. Smith has a rotational pass rush with Highsmith and TJ Watt. I think that's dangerous. And I really like Mike Williams, a guy who is getting healthier off his ACL tear and just really didn't get an opportunity in New York. Aaron Rodgers kind of, shafted him with 2 shitty throws at the end of the game. And really that kind of killed that trust. So I think, what does Mike Williams historically do well? The deep ball. And what does Russell Wilson historically do well? He throws a nice deep ball. So I do actually think that, although not the sexiest, biggest splash plays, I do think those trades are actually some key additions for Pittsburgh. So I'd be interested to see how that goes moving forward. We'll see what Mike Williams' numbers are when they drop.
Yeah, it was. I think that we knew that Mike Williams was going to be the odd man out there for the New York Jets, especially after the acquisition of Devontae Adams there for the Jets. Just really hasn't been able to find his footing just yet. He's coming off the injuries that he did suffer. So hopefully, in Pittsburgh where they need some wide receiving help, I think that he could definitely be a boost to that wide receiving group there, especially with how great Russell Wilson has played. Knock on wood, if you're a Steelers fan, over the first 2 starts that he's made thus far this season. And I think at least going up against the Commanders secondary here, it could be a pretty big statistical game, I should say, at least for Russell Wilson in this game again.
They did. I did forget to mention they just obviously picked up Marshawn Lattimore, obviously on the Washington side. That is kind of the big addition over there. Now, he was dealing with the hamstring injury, and he did only hurt himself, in week 8. So this would only be 2 weeks of recovery. Yeah, obviously Devontae Adams cleaned up and got healthy pretty quickly after a trade. I'm not exactly sure if that's the same situation. It's obviously tough to tell. We only go off what they really tell us. So I'm very interested to see his practice status on Wednesday, Thursday here for Marshawn Lattimore. Because, if he did suffer a hamstring injury to come back in 2 weeks, if it's minor, there's a chance, but there's always a little bit risky there. So if he truly did suffer an injury, I would expect him to be at least limited, and we'll see if he wants to roll it out there and give it a shot his first game out. So definitely something to monitor. As you mentioned, that secondary has not been very good.
As we kind of go through this early in the week, I think, this is the one, I think, podcast where you kind of want to get your pen and paper out and write these names down because, we're projecting it obviously early, but, those injury reports and status of these players come out obviously in the latter part of the week, Thursday going into Friday there. So I think those are some things that our listeners should definitely be writing down, because I definitely make a note of it as well. And that's how we really capitalize on the player prop market going forward, at least for the games that are being played on Sunday or even Thursday night football. Sebastian, before we continue the conversation here, my man, let me remind everyone about our good friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Pick'em has one of the biggest menus for all sports: NFL, college football, college basketball, MMA, NBA, NASCAR, and more. Boostober is officially upon us. Then they're getting a spooky amount of profit boosts, and much more. And you can now use specials and boosts on all flex entries. So sign up with promo code MACHINE to claim your special pick and first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. That's underdogfantasy.com. Make sure you use that promo code MACHINE. All right, let's continue the conversation here. Let's get over to the next game in the schedule for Sunday, NFL Week 10, NFC South matchup. The Atlanta Falcons, they are going to be in the Big Easy to take on the Saints. Saints currently catching 3.5 points in this game with a total of 46 in this matchup. Sebastian, what do we got for Falcons and Saints?
Yeah, potentially could be a really ugly game here. Obviously, division rivalry. We'll see. Saints, obviously, somewhat of sellers at the deadline. They fired their head coach and Dennis Allen. Is this going to be a bump game or have they completely quit? I don't think I've ever seen so many players tweet immediately after a game than I saw the New Orleans Saints on X this week. But for the Saints side of the ball, Chris Olave is obviously the big one with his concussion. He got knocked out, taken to the hospital, put on the stretcher. Thankfully, all movement extremities, he's good. He was released there. Now, I mean, I would say there's really very slim to no chances he's on the field, obviously, with how public his injury was. And, I mean, he was just on the concussion protocol 2 weeks ago. He got cleared. He came back, had to get tested out and clear that again. So, Chris Olave's concussions has kind of been a very common pairing of words recently. And I think the NFL is definitely going to take notice. And I don't think he'll quite get the Tua treatment where it's kind of almost forced into an IR. But I would not be surprised if he misses a couple weeks here. Not even from just kind of the NFL politics side, but just the repetitive brain trauma injuries. Never good. So it's a situation where this is a lost season for the Saints. I wouldn't mind him at all reevaluating what's going on. Now, obviously, he's on a couple of my fantasy lineups. It's not ideal, but from a human level and from a player level, I think I'd understand if Chris Olave does take a little bit of a break. So we'll see there. Nothing kind of definite. I know when he came back from his last concussion, he was asked about the Guardian caps, and he was pretty, adamant that he wasn't going to wear them. So we'll see how he goes there. And then we've got Drake London on the other side, dealing with a hip pointer. Hip pointer, I always think this is funny. Basically, it's like a bruise to your hip bone. You just land really hard on your hip. So that's pretty much what it is. It's a pain tolerance thing. So it really just depends on how it develops, how the swelling goes down, if he's able to play. He's definitely got a shot. If he doesn't play this week, I think he would definitely play next week, typically a 1 to 2 week injury. And then star defensive tackle Grady Jarrett, dealing with an Achilles strain, ruled out, concerning, not something you want to see, especially from one of your better players who was coming off a major injury. Which I'd have to check, but I can't remember if it was an ACL or Achilles tear that he was coming off of already coming into the season. So either way, a bit concerning there for Grady Jarrett. It was an ACL tear, so okay, at least it wasn't Achilles, but still, either way, a bit concerning there for Jarrett. So a couple of big play guys, not a ton of injuries, but a couple of big names that could definitely be out this week.
All right, let's keep it moving here. Let's get over to the Minnesota Vikings. They are going to be in Florida to take on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Vikings currently laying 4 points in this game on the road with a total of 47 here. Sebastian, what are we looking at for Vikings and Jags?
Yeah, let's go ahead and pull that up. Yeah, really just one. And it's I don't talk about him a lot, but it's a kicker, right? Will Reichard on the IR with a quad injury. Most teams have been able to figure it out with the kicking situation, just something to monitor. He's actually, despite, not being so great last week on Sunday Night Football, he has been a pretty good kicker for them. So it's something to monitor. Obviously, if you have Reichert on your lineups, you want to put him in your IR. Probably don't want to waste an IR slot, but, want to drop him there. He's going to be out at least 4 weeks. Other than that, Brian Thomas is going to continue to get healthier. So is ETN, Gabe Davis, those guys over on the Jacksonville side. And in Minnesota, I think just something I want to highlight, they picked up left tackle Cam Robinson from the Jaguars too recently. And that's kind of been a big deal because Christian Darrisaw was their best tackle. So we'll see how he matches in a bit of a revenge game, but not a ton there. Really, the Reichert news right now is the biggest thing.
All right, let's keep it rolling here. Let's get over to the New England Patriots. They are in the Windy City to take on the Bears. Bears currently laying 6 points in this game with a total of 39 here. Sebastian, anything for Pats and Bears?
Yeah, just a quick note on Drake May, who was obviously able to play only 1 week off his concussion, similar to a guy like Tyrone Tracy, who only cleared concussion protocol in 6 days. We talked about this at the top, when we first started doing this show. It seems like in the beginning of the year, the NFL is very, very strict on no one's clearing this concussion protocol in a week. And then as we get further into the season, they kind of like relax on the reins a little bit. I can't, it's going to be a tough sell for you to tell me that all the concussion symptoms magically get better as we get further into the season. I don't think that's very likely. So I think the NFL just gets a little bit more lenient as we get closer to the playoffs. But really the injuries on the Bears side of the ball, starting with quarterback Caleb Williams, rolled his ankle. Really not a concern there. Should be good to go for next week. Obviously, we saw Mahomes do this twice in the past 2 weeks and come back and play and be effective. So it's not a major injury. No concerns there. However, I am concerned about their offensive line and their defensive backfield. They were already mixing, Tevin Jenkins was beat up. Braxton Jones was beat up. Now Darnell Wright, their starting lineman, ruled out with an MCL sprain. Although MCL sprains are kind of best case scenario for ligaments, still, the chance that he misses next week is pretty high. And then defensive backs Jalen Jones and Terrell Smith both ruled out, one with the shoulder and ankle injury. They were already down guys like Kyler Gordon, name's evading me, but they were Jaquan Brisker as well, was also some guys that they're already down. So, it's like those injuries within themselves, maybe not a huge deal, but those positions have been beat up these past couple of weeks. So definitely something to check there. New England's been scrappy with Drake May. So if you're missing potentially 4 defensive backs and 3 offensive linemen, I've been kind of someone who's faded the Bears the past couple of weeks, and I don't know if that's changing this week.
Yeah, go figure. Last week, Drake May, we talked about the concussion protocol, that if he would clear or not. He, in fact, obviously did. Just comes out last week and runs for 95 yards on the ground for the New England Patriots there. So it doesn't seem like a huge concern there with Derek May. Let's keep it rolling here, Sebastian. We'll get over to I know we weren't going to really talk about this game, but there was a potential scare for Monday Night Football with Patrick Mahomes, but everything seems like everything is fine with him. You will be playing this game against the Broncos, but did anything, I guess when you watched that injury or Patrick Mahomes, when it did come out, was there any concern there?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, this was, I was texting Kramer. He was texting me about it, and he was like asking, what my thoughts were. And I was like, dude, it was a weird mechanism of injury. I know people were talking about the knee and the hip, and that's why I didn't really immediately say anything, because I wasn't really sure. It really was just he took a hard, awkward step because he was thinking of running, and then he was trying to pull up. So when he took that hard step, essentially he just kind of re-rolled his ankle. There was a moment of instability, and it wasn't a classic like full roll. It was just kind of like it was already unstable and just kind of had a little bit of an unstable moment. And I tweeted out, but from the front view, you can see kind of where that shift in the ankle really is. Obviously not a huge deal. Once he was able to start walking, it's one of those things where we've all had it, whether it's an ankle sprain or you just kind of take a wrong step and you're just like, oof, that kind of doesn't feel good. And then you just kind of walk it out type deal. So yeah, no, not a lot of concerns. Obviously, when you sprain your ankle once and you don't have a ton of time to rehab and recover, yeah, you have a little bit more of a re-injury risk there. Right. So now that he's done it twice in 2 weeks, there is a bit of concern there. However, he's still Patrick Mahomes, and obviously if he was able to play on it right now, it wasn't a high ankle mechanism that I saw that I would be much more concerned about. Since it was more that low ankle, I'm not very concerned.
All right. I just want to quickly mention, I think that would have been beneficial to the listeners here. I know, obviously, I think huge for Patrick Mahomes, but I thought definitely worth mentioning. All right, let's keep it rolling here. We've got the San Francisco 49ers. They're coming off their bye week. They are headed on the road to take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Niners currently laying 5 points in this game with a total of 50.5, and potentially a big name returning here for the San Francisco 49ers here, Sebastian.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest news, obviously, CMC, Christian McCaffrey. He's back. He's back at practice. I mean, I've been saying for the past several weeks, the week 10 after the bye week is the expected target date. Now, look, I'm not no genius or anything like that. I mean, it makes sense based on what they were trying to do and coming off the bye week. So that's what it looks like we're going to have. He's practicing, and I'm ready to go full go on McCaffrey. Now, the matchup, I mean, Kareem Hunt was able to get his against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Typically a little bit more of a stout defense that gets the run than the pass. But I think definitely him coming out of the backfield. No Sebastian Dennis still for Tampa Bay. KJ Britt has been a liability in coverage. I know Levante David's been good, but you can't always mix them up on that, and they're not going to one-on-one. So I think CMC out of the backfield is really going to – I think he's going to show us all like what we were missing with CMC. I know he's been collecting dust in my RI spot. I'm very excited to roll him out there with really full trust. Now, the conversation becomes, how long are we going to get Chris McCaffrey with his Achilles tendonitis thing? It's not really something I'm super concerned about during the game. It's kind of how does he handle the game load, the game reps, and how is it, after the game or leading up to the game. So once he's cleared and ready to go, I'm ready to go and have faith in him for those 2.5 hours that he's playing. It's the kind of load as far as moving on into the season where we get concerned. That is where, season-long stuff becomes a little bit more hairy. But the game itself, I do have a good amount of trust in CMC. And let's be honest, they've really kind of, I don't want to say babied it, but they've been very conservative in their approach with this. They could have rolled him out a lot sooner. They held him out for, 2.5 months. I think that it's time to unleash CMC there. Obviously, Tampa Bay side still no Godwin, no Mike Evans, who's on the IR. They're still very beat up. They might be able to get Jalen McMillan back on that team, and they're scrappy. Baker's been playing well, but it's going to be another tough matchup. At least they're at home against a solid 49ers team.
Now, what does this mean for Jordan Mason?
I think we can pretty much throw him in the trash. I appreciated him as a nice waiver wire pickup. He definitely kind of steadied the waters a bit, but man, that shoulder injury he's been dealing with has just been really fucking annoying, to be frank.
Yeah.
He's coming in the games, coming out of the games, especially some games he's had some very solid matchups. Clearly it's still bothering him. 2 weeks isn't going to be something where it magically goes away. It seems like every time he gets hit in the shoulder, he goes out and he puts his helmet on, like teasing us the whole game and never decides to come back. So, they liked Isaac Grendo. I don't think Jordan Mason is going to be playable unless CMC is ruled out of a game. That's pretty much, I think that the Jordan Mason train is pretty much done.
Yeah, and that's the angle I was looking at. What you mentioned earlier about CMC was him catching passes out of the backfield, because he's been absolutely phenomenal, in particular against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, coming out of the backfield. We'll be interested to see what the number is set out coming back for CMC in his first game this season, at least for the San Francisco 49ers. So we'll definitely keep an eye on that one for sure. All right, let's keep it rolling here. Let's get over to the Tennessee Titans. They are going to be in LA to take on the Chargers. Chargers are laying 7.5 points in this game with a total of 38. Here, Sebastian, what are we looking at for Titans and Chargers?
Yeah, really just a couple for the Titans I wanted to mention. Safety Quandre Diggs, Liz Frank injury to either the ligament or the bones in the midfoot, requires season-ending surgery. He's going to be out for the season, as well as center Lloyd Cushenberry out with an Achilles tear. He's done for the year too. So really just, these were some key starters to this team, two of their better players on a pretty bad team. Prop market, it might be tough, but obviously advantage Chargers, there was advantage Chargers already, but now you got two kind of key pieces, one on offense, one on defense, that's going to be out for a bad Titans team. So this is just going to be trouble. Offensive line, look for, if you want to play some Chargers sacks and things like that nature, that might be fun. Or, with the safety, I know they've been good against the pass, but obviously with Diggs has been a part of that. So if you want to play something like a Quentin Johnson or something like that, I could see that.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, if your book does offer like team sack props, I think the Chargers over on their sack props here would be a good look in this game between the Titans and the Chargers. We'll move it along here to a NFC East matchup, or lack thereof. The Philadelphia Eagles, they are in Dallas to take on the Cowboys. Eagles laying 7 points here on the road with a total of 42. And we did get some news early this week about quarterback Dak Prescott for the Cowboys here, Sebastian.
Yeah, let's just take a moment to say both these teams suck. I hope it ends with a tie or anything like that. But no, Dak Prescott, Dakota Rain, hamstring injury, initially thought to be minor. Now, more of that moderate grade 2 type. He's likely going to end up on the IR tomorrow, which I'm not too shocked. Grade 2 is that 4 to 6 week window where it kind of makes sense to put the guy on the IR. Just give them time to fully recover. Don't kind of hang that carrot in their head, because the high re-injury rates come from guys trying to rush back. So if you put them on the IR, you kind of take that out of the equation a little bit, like they did with Nico Collins and some other players there. So would not be surprised if he's on the IR, which means we get 4+ weeks of Cooper Kupp. Yay, us as the viewing audience. Micah Parsons looks like he'll be back from his high ankle sprain. I'm almost shocked that not completely shocked, but I'm surprised it took him this long to get back on the field. Maybe some business decisions being made there, but he is probable for this week. I do expect him to play. And then you have CeeDee Lamb dealing with an AC sprain, a acromioclavicular joint kind of right here. Happens when you either land on it hard or you get kind of like a land out on the shoulder there. Kind of gets jammed up in there, right? Not considered serious. MRI fairly clean. Kind of a similar pain tolerance situation, different body part, but similar to Drake London, where it's kind of if he can play through the pain. Most guys get an injection and are able to play through it. It's a big game, so I would expect him to suit up. I mean, this is pretty much Dallas' season on the line. I know they don't have Dak Prescott, but I mean, Cooper Kupp was able to steady the waters back in 2022, or excuse me, Cooper Rush. So we'll see. I mean, if he's obviously he needs CeeDee Lamb out there to have a chance. Micah Parsons being back on defense will help. We'll see about guys like Deron Bland and Kalen Carson and Trevon Diggs there for that defensive backfield. I still don't expect DeMarcus Lawrence to be back. So this one, Cowboys is definitely going to be a lot of moving pieces there. For the Philadelphia Eagles side, I mean, it's just one, but it's a massive one. It's A.J. Brown with his knee injury. Now, good news, MRI revealed no significant structural damage. Labeled as day-to-day. Said it might be more of a contusion type. So similar situation, contusion, just a bruise to, one of the muscles that he was injured there. Pain tolerance. Is he going to be able to play through it? Some are worse than others. Some you're able to be fine in a couple of days, and others you may not. So I think with that no structural damage, he might give it a shot. We'll see though, because he's been someone in the past who I thought was going to be able to fight through some things, and he was ultimately ruled out. So this is definitely some injury reports you want to watch, because this is going to be guys that, I mean, you've got Prescott's definitely out, but you've got A.J. Brown, Michael Parsons, CeeDee Lamb, like huge guys that are going to impact this game.
All right. Yeah, I mean, look, this would have been a matchup that definitely would have been fun to watch here if at least the Cowboys were number one healthy, especially at that quarterback position that we just talked about, but also maybe for division implications. But it's going to be a little bit of a clunker in this game between these two squads. 2 games left here will be the prime time games here for Sunday to wrap up Week 10. We got the Detroit Lions. They are in Houston to take on the Texans. Texans currently catching 3.5 points in this game with a total of 49 here. Sebastian, what are we looking at for Sunday Night Football between the Lions and the Texans?
Yeah, you might be able to get more insight here, but really the biggest one I'm tracking is Nico Collins. He was expected to be back off the IR, and this is his first week he's eligible to come back. They had a bit of a mini bye week with the Thursday Night Football game there, obviously taking the loss to the Jets, which, I mean, it was kind of it was a sleepy game. I think a lot of people could see that coming. I don't think it's a real reflection of exactly how good they are. I think they just got caught in a bad spot without a lot of wide receiver help there. So I do expect him right now to be back off IR. Now, obviously, let's see where practice and things look like, but all signs were pointing to him being back, which obviously is huge for not only Collins, but for CJ Stroud. I mean, CJ Stroud with and without Nico Collins, there's a pretty massive difference. As much as they'll miss Stephon Diggs, I think Collins is clearly the wide receiver one there. He matters a lot more to this team. So with him being back, I mean, they definitely will have a chance. Detroit, I mean, they just picked up edge rusher Jadarius Smith, which is going to be big for them because they were very much lacking a pass rush without Aiden Hutchinson and without Marcus Davenport. So I still don't know if it's going to completely fix everything. It'll definitely help. But if CJ Stroud is able to sit back there with time, which is something he really hasn't had much this season, and he's got Nico Collins running down the field, I think this definitely has the potential to be a shootout.
Yeah, I mean, head coach D'Amico Ryans was asked about it, and he mentioned that we're going to evaluate him as the week progresses here. But the indications were before the game they played on Thursday Night Football in Week 9 that he was anticipated to return for the Texans this week, coming off the IR, or at least being eligible to come off the IR, I should say, for the Texans here. So hopefully he does come back, like you mentioned, being on a mini bye week and playing on Sunday Night Football as well. And definitely if they use him on offense, especially since we talked about last week, the departure, or I should say the season-ending injury suffered by Stephon Diggs with a torn ACL. All right, before we get to the Monday night football game to wrap up NFL Week 10, let me tell everyone about our good friends over at Rhythm. SGPN's proud partner Rhythm is the number one AI-powered back sports betting platform that helps provide bettors of all levels the ability to build custom predictive betting models in seconds and get predictions for betting on money lines, spreads, totals, and props. Build your own model, copy one of the top performing models from the leaderboard, or press build a model from Yin. Rhythm gives you predictions for every game, player props, and also has a myriad of stats, research, and trend analysis to give you even more betting insights. And now you can track props in the Rhythm app, and Rhythm just launched their college basketball models as well. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. And Ross, we're brought to you at BetUS. Bet with the best in the business. BetUS. BetUS has been around for more than 30 years. Easily deposit using using cryptocurrency and lightning fast payouts. U.S. players are always welcome. And you can go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/BetUS. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/BetUS. Promo code SGPN so they know that we sent you. BetUS, America's favorite sports book. All right, Sebastian, last game of the night. That is going to be, I should say, for week 10. Monday Night Football. The Miami Dolphins, they are in LA to take on the Rams. Rams currently laying 2.5 points in this game with a total of 50 in this game. What are we looking at for Dolphins and Rams?
Yeah, a game that could really, between Sunday night, Monday night, some games that could have some absolute fireworks here, which everyone likes to see. Rams really on their side, it's just offensive tackle, right tackle Rob Harvenstein with an ankle injury. It looks like he's going to be doubtful and likely will miss week 10. The fact they've already probably ruled him out is probably not a good sign for not this week, but multiple weeks coming forward. Now, the good news is they just activated swing tackle Joe Newtboom off the IR. So, kind of -1+1 there. Obviously, Havenstein is the starter for a reason, but Noteboom is a solid swing tackle, someone who has plenty of experience. So, and Miami's pass rush with Jalen Phillips being out, still no Bradley Chubb, and really no mention of him returning at this point. Definitely a situation where if Stafford has time, as long as Puka Nacua doesn't go throwing any more punches. I know the Miami Dolphins have been a decent secondary, but I think it's just because everyone's been able to run all over them. Is really, I think as we've seen Kyler Murray and Josh Allen have some success there, I don't think it's as much as they've been a dominating unit, more so as people can just run all over them. So, and they're already in the lead. So why throw on them, especially when Tua was out? They didn't really need to put up many points. So, you see a lot of really good statistics for this Miami pass defense. And we're kind of quickly finding out it's not really the case that there's some elite unit. And I think that I think both teams are going to be able to have success through the air. So we'll see. But obviously, we talked about Kyron last week, and I think Kyron this week is a solid play with Miami's porous rush defense.
Yeah, if their season wasn't already over, but a loss for Miami, he would pretty much put the nail in the coffin for their seats as they currently sit 2-6 on the season. Obviously with Tua was out in the front half of the year. 3-game losing streak for the Miami Dolphins, and then for the LA Rams, sitting at 4-4. They've won 3 games in a row, so it's going to be every game's going to matter, especially in that NFC West division.
Yep.
All right, that is pretty much it here for all the injury news and updates for NFL Week 10. Talked about a couple of guys that we will be looking at the player prop market, but again, definitely keep an eye out for all the injury news as it progresses throughout the week here for the respective teams and the matchups there. Sebastian, anything else you want to mention, my man, before we get out of here?
No, just as my man Munaf was saying, make sure you take out those pencils and pens and write some things down, because as soon as those props drop and you agree or you like something, take it. It's not going to get better. I promise you those prices are only going to go down.
Yeah, again, we've talked about it a lot. As soon as those props drop on your respective book, you got to jump on it, because those numbers will be on the move. And I think we've been on the right side of more times than not thus far this season. So hopefully we put some more money in the pockets of our listeners here for this upcoming NFL Week 10. Make sure you guys check out Sebastian over on the Twitter machine at the DJ and Doc. You can follow me there as well at SportsNerd824. But also make sure you guys check out Sebastian on the podcast there as well. Go even further in depth with fantasy player props, talking about the injuries over the DGen Docs is the official podcast there. So check them out on Spotify. You can check them out on YouTube as well. But again, give them a subscription or subscribe to them as well But we'll be back next week for NFL Week 11, talking about some more injuries that do transpire, guys that are maybe will be out, or maybe guys that are even coming back. We'll talk about some of the guys that we did see, in particular CMC, and how they look after their first game of the regular season. So a lot of football left to be played here. A lot still to be determined here, but definitely looking forward to it as we progress here throughout the season. All right, we'll be back next week, like I mentioned. Till then, good luck with your bets. Let's break these books off, and always remember to let it ride.